Just want to again welcome everybody to this morning's session, and we're proud to introduce our three guests today, coming from the Meadow Lake Tribal Council, with the Senior Director of Education at the Meadow Lake Tribal Council, based out of Meadow Lake, Saskatchewan. And MLTC Education provides second-level services to the 9 Meadow Lake First Nations that include both Dene and Cree linguistic groups that are scattered across 3 treaty territories, which are 6, 8, and 10. She has over 20 years of experience in the field of education, specifically in the areas of special education and leadership. A proud member of the Peter Ballantyne Cree Nation, Asiniskawitnook, means people of the Rocky area, and sometimes people would say the Rock Cree. So thank you very much there to our Director of Education, which is also having her staff member, the Superintendent of Education, Elizabeth Reed, join us today, originally from the English River First Nation in education for almost 25 years. This will be her 7th year with MLTC as one of the superintendents with MLTC. Some of the her areas of focus is student wellness, student services, and clinical team supports workers in the areas of counseling, educational psychology, speech pathology, occupational therapy, referrals for all of the communities. Assessment and therapy support school-based administrators in areas of course, teacher appraisals, LLRC initiatives, secondary program approvals, modified, alternate, locally developed, and FIP programming. Patricia St. Denis, our hunter of the Meadow Lake area. Patricia St. Denis is Superintendent of Education for MLTC, a proud Muskeg No Isquil from Cumberland House Cree Nation. She has been with MLTC Education going on for 5 years. As Superintendent of Education, she supports early learning intervention, supports for school-based learning, administrators in areas such as land-based learning, language, relationships, culture, instructional leadership, school success planning, SBA, and teacher appraisals. So with that said, thank you very much to our presenters today and everybody that's joined us. With that, I'll give it over to our Director of Education, Heather Merasty.
Thank you so much, Simon, for those introductions. It's nice to see your face. It's been a while for sure. So thank you for those warm words of introduction there. We do have our team here, our senior admin team, Patricia St. Denis and Elizabeth Reed, that will be presenting with me. And part of that is purposeful because we are a team, and so we present together. And so what we're going to start with is just a little bit of getting to know us, who we are, where we're located, the MLTC organization, Meadow Lake Tribal Council, and the services we provide to our 9 First Nations. And then we want to talk about how we've navigated through the pandemic and are moving towards the development of a holistic education framework. And so feel free to ask any questions at all during any time. Simon Bird will be monitoring the chat, and he'll interrupt me anytime to have us answer those questions. So we're really looking forward to today's presentation and learning also from you and getting to know you as well. So with that, Simon did a wonderful introduction for us, so we don't need to go into too much detail here, but on the presentation, there is our contact information for our email. So if you ever need to contact us, feel free to do that and reach out. We're more than willing to share ideas, to collaborate, and to work together with other First Nations and organizations. So I'm Heather Merasty at MLTC. Like Simon said, I'm from the north in Saskatchewan, and we have a bit of a map later in the presentation to show you where exactly we're located in case you're unfamiliar. So next we have Patricia, and I'll allow her to introduce herself.
That I was just thinking Simon did such an excellent job. He makes it sound like we're all his sisters. So anyway, just and he's shaking his head because he's saying it's true. And so yeah, I am going into my 6th year, so 5 full years with MLTC, and 6th year that I'm starting. I about 23 years of experience in all different areas in education. So anyway, that's me.
Thank you, Patricia. And her contact information is patricia.denis@mltc.ca. And I know these slides will be shared with participants later on. And then our lovely Elizabeth Reed.
Yes, morning. Thanks, Simon, for that wonderful introduction. Kind of not too much left to say. I am one of the ladies from the Treaty 10 area. I do work in the Treaty 6, and I've probably been in Saskatchewan all of my life teaching. You can see where I've only been at Pelican Lake First Nations and Canoe Lake Cree Nation for 14 years, and this is my 7th year with MLTC, and continue to love the work that we do with our teams and with each other. So looking forward to our presentation today. Thank you. Oh, and it's Elizabeth.Reed@MLTC, and it's READ.
So fitting for an educator, right? Thank you for that, Elizabeth. So just to give you some background about the Meadow Lake Tribal Council, it started in 1981, and it was known as the Meadow Lake District Chiefs Joint Venture, and officially became Meadow Lake Tribal Council in 1996. Back then in 81, there was about 10 employees, and they had an overall $150,000 budget. However, fast forward to 2020, we have over 300 employees and manage a budget approximately 75 million. And so it's grown substantially over the years because of the really good work that this organization does. And it's not just education that the Meadow Lake Tribal Council provides programs and services in. They also have an executive management team, child family services, economic development, elders, finance, and they have a corporate side as well, including human resources, health, IT or information technology, justice, and youth development. So it's education is one small piece of a larger umbrella of services that Meadow Lake Tribal Council provides to their 9 First Nations. So here we are, right kind of dab in the middle of Canada. So that blue dot in the middle is where Meadow Lake Tribal Council is located. So our offices are on the Flying Dust First Nation, and then we extend all the way up into about 400 kilometers north of Meadow Lake and surrounding areas. Our 9 schools are kind of scattered amongst the northwest part of the province. And like Simon said, we have 2 linguistic groups within our 9 First Nations, and we cover those 3 treaty territories of 6, 8, and 10. And MLTC's goal is really to work towards improving existing programs and services and to create programs and services that meets our First Nations unique and ever-changing needs. And the map on the left is the list of our and locations of our 9 First Nations. And overall for education, we have 9 schools. They're all nursery to grade 12 with the exception of Flying Dust, which are nursery to grade 8. And at any given time, we have anywhere between 2,200 to 2,400 students within our 9 First Nations. We do have a federally incorporated Board of Education that helps give us direction in our different avenues and initiatives. And really the goal of the board is to improve educational outcomes for all. And we know that each of our communities have specific needs and unique, they're unique to one another, but there are some decisions and things and frameworks that we create to support all of them. But it also gives them the flexibility and opportunities to really customize their education program to meet their community specific and unique needs. So as Simon said in our introduction, we are second level services. We are not a school division. So thinking about your provincial school divisions, that is not what we are. Each of our First Nations, they direct what happens in their school. The leadership is the leaders, and they give the direction to the school, and we're there to help supplement in a variety of different areas. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. So one example of that is in a school division, they make the decisions to close the school during the pandemic if there's an outbreak, and they make those rules that apply to everyone. Whereas the chief and council will make decisions on whether the school is closed for how long and that type of thing. Of course, both organizations follow the health orders and things like that, but it's not myself or the superintendents who will close the school, it's the leadership that would. And that's just one of the differences between our services and a school division. So this is a bit of an organizational overview of who we are. We do have myself, the superintendents. We also have HR managers and finance supports. Our big initiatives that we facilitate for our 9 are curriculum instruction and assessment. You may have heard LLRC in some of our presentations before, which is really land, language, relationships, and culture, early learning, instructional leadership, and student wellness, formerly known as special education. So our tier 1 supports are that community level, the elders, the teachers, the parents, caregivers, the leadership, the land in each of our communities. And when they need additional supports, we do provide funding for many different positions in the school. So we provide funding directly to the First Nation to acquire an LLRC catalyst, a numeracy catalyst, a literacy catalyst, and an early learning interventionist. So those are school-based positions to help in the school. And it's 1 per school, so they're not driving between schools or communities. And then at tier 3 or MLTC education, we have a variety of different consultants and coordinators and contractors to help support those catalysts, our teachers, and our school-based administrators. So we just listed those there for your information. So in the past, we've done our second level service delivery, trying to meet the needs as best we can with of our 9 First Nations. And, you know, we provided in services, our staff go out and work one-on-one with teachers, students, school-based administrators. We provide large PDs, large fall PD, our Full Circle conference, which some of you might be familiar with, which we've had to postpone the last couple of years because of the pandemic. But we will be putting on one not as large or open to the public, but for our staff. So we're going to try and bring that back slowly, of course, pending our pandemic and the restrictions. And then all of a sudden, the pandemic hit and our organization closed the office. Everybody had to go work from home as of March 16th. Now, of course, this is new to everyone. We did continue our supports, but through a virtual platform. Most people were working from home, except for our essential services. Connectivity has always been an issue in our First Nations, and in some of us, in some of our homes, there was no connectivity. We also didn't have enough tech devices for all the students as well to be able to access an academic program from their home. Our teachers, some of them, you know, there's a spectrum of skills, and so we noticed that we needed additional training for those teachers and supports and things like that. And we had to do all this with no additional tribal council funding from Indigenous services. All the information coming with everything in the news and updates, it was really overwhelming, and a lot of change. We saw a lot of fear and anxiety. We were concerned about mental health needs of our staff, our students, our families, and elders played a large part in our professional development, and we weren't able to have them there to support us on online. And really a lot of the fear and anxiety and everything else was the unknown. There was no playbook for this, and there's a lot of questions. So in spite of what happened with the pandemic and the closures and all these changes, we really looked at some of the blessings, because that's really all we could do. And so what we found over the last year and a half is that our communication increased. We were reaching out, we were having more meetings online. In the past, we'd be at schools and on the road traveling. And when we were work from home, we had so much more communication. It really increased. We started looking at our priorities. What is our top priorities during this time? And so we made our lists and we communicated with our staff. They collaborated on what our initiatives were and what was the priority. So our collaboration increased, our relationships increased as well. We really had opportunities to get to know our staff on a different level as well. And we started finding efficiencies. We had a lot of paperwork and paper going back and forth. And so we were forced to use software and technology to find some efficiencies. And one of the big things that we had is now we had time to work on those initiatives that we envisioned. So we always would say, when we have time, or if we have time, we would like to do this, this, and this. And that is one of the blessings that came out of the pandemic, is that we had that time to develop that, what we envisioned. And so we're going to get into the work that we have done over the last year and a half and where that's taken us. So it's really about living the good life to the fullest and incorporating our Indigenous values and laws and using that to ground the development of our holistic education. So how did we start? Our journey really started many years ago without us even knowing it. And I say that because the Meadow Lake Tribal Council has been negotiating with Indigenous Services Canada towards, they call it an REA. Now we've called it a collective all along the way. And what it was is really to develop a system that will meet the needs of our students in a holistic way. And doing that, we need funding. And so from those negotiations, we had to do a lot of community consultation with our elders and things like that. So that was happening alongside for the last couple of years. But within our office, we had a lot of turnover, a lot of changes. We had some cuts in funding, and it was really inconsistent. And we also had a lot of issues, and such as lateral violence and things like that, high turnover. So what we did is we started looking within, and we started identifying what are our issues in this office. And we talked about them because and uncovered them, because if you don't know what it is that's happening, how do you heal from it? How do you move forward? So we really broke that open. And that's where some of the relationship building really started. And then we brought in a lot of team building. So We had speakers come in, we had different activities, we had groups, we had lots of professional development. We work with Chris Scribe and Think Indigenous, and have brought in the trauma liberation certification. And we've done this all together as a team in our staff meetings. And then also our senior admin team, so our superintendents and our managers, we all got together and took some leadership training together. And I think the most important part about that was not the content of what we were learning, but the time to be together and not talk about work and not have, interruptions and things like that, but to be able to just be together and get to know each other. And so that's where we started. And then we needed to build a vision, because we know everybody comes from different backgrounds, different experiences. And we're like, how do we align that into one thing that we all can believe in, and that it's driven by our communities? And so we went to leadership during some of those consultations for our negotiations. We had an elder consultation, that was the first one. And they really gave us our grounding. They gave us that direction. And I think that was one of the really critical moments, because it wasn't this leader or that leader saying, this is what we have to do. It wasn't my idea or a single person's idea. It came from the elders from all 9 First Nations, and that drives what we do, which is really important to have that foundation. And then of course we had community consultation, and we do community consultation on an ongoing basis as needed when we have questions. It's not once a year and that's all that happens. If we need that consultation, we might do it many times in a year.
I have a
And
question
then,
there, Heather.
yes.
I'm not sure if you mentioned, but how are elders elected or selected from the community, and is it different in each of the communities?
So a good question. MLTC, we ask the chief and council of each of our communities to put forward 2 elders that will represent them. So we have 18 elders, and we rotate through them for whatever we need. And so we have an elder here in our office for all of MLTC. And if we're doing any type of thing and we need an elder, we fill out a request. And then our elder will make sure that there's not just one being utilized all the time, that there's a constant flow. So we get a variety of them coming to our meetings and providing supports and things like that. So it's nice because we get to have Denis and Cree. We quite often utilize a Denis and a Cree elder for our meetings and things like that. And once the term's over, then they can nominate more elders. So that's at the MLTC level, but at the communities, of course, the elders are identified, and by the school, how we utilize them is that if there's something happening and they need the knowledge, they know which elder has that knowledge and is the knowledge keeper of that. And so that's how they're utilized in that sense.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome. So after we've had our foundation and our leadership elders giving us that direction, then we started looking at our resources. This is what they want. How do we do it? What do we need? What do we have already? And then we started looking for different areas of proposal funding, as well as within, how do we move some of it around to make this vision come true? So that's a little bit of the history and background, I'd say, of the last 7 years to get us to where we are today. And it's a journey that will continue on for sure. So from our elders gathering that we had our Cree and Denis elders. We had separate tables for them. We had lots of questions for them, and just really open-ended in regards to what was education or learning like in the past? What do you remember? What is your vision for the future. So forget about lack of funding, forget about any kind of barriers, restrictions. What is your dream of education? What should it look like? And so there's a lot of discussion there. And that's what we took to start building. And one of the things that they were able to give us was our Cree values and our Denis values, as well as something that we're working on is our Denis and Cree laws and collecting that. And ideally, what we'd like to do, that's not loading. Ideally, what we'd like to do is build this into, I'm not sure if people are familiar with the Virtues Project, something along the lines of that all teachers would be able to utilize and focus their teaching in these areas. And so that would be the foundation for a lot of our curriculum development and the work that we do. So this was the big one to identify and having us build our holistic model and move forward with it. So another area that we really wanted to look at is instructional leadership. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Patricia St. Denis because she really drove this portion of it. And I know her passion is in it. And so I will let her explain it because she has done such an exceptional job for our communities. And I just want to thank her for that. So Patricia.
Thank you very much, Heather. So we all know that instructional leadership is based on what are things that are happening in our school and that how we attach them to assessment, and then we make our goals. We work together as a team within our school. And then when you think of Indigenous instructional leadership, you look at all of that, plus making sure that you have community involvement along with our elders in each nation. But then I needed to dig even deeper and go for what does leadership mean in my being a Swampy Cree woman. And I had talked to my auntie, and it was uniganyo, and that is the act of leadership. And that means to me in the instructional leadership, it's more than just the school, it's the community, it's the land, it's just being able to give everybody place and space. So in the Meadow Lake Tribal Council, and when you put your wishes out and the things that you would like to see as a development, we have been working with our youth. We have teamed together with Think Indigenous for our youth Red Talks, and we want to give them a place and a space and a safe platform for them to give the truth bombs. And one of the things that through the instructional leadership is to lead SBA's school-based admin and teachers through a journey. It isn't a journey that's based on a hire or a fire for the work that they do in the school. We all know that the most important thing for our Indigenous people today is to heal from their traumas so that they can, create more space in their heart and their mind and their whole body to accept new learnings and become who they envision themselves to become without all of that trauma. So that's what I work hard to try to, along with Heather and Liz and a lot of other people, to be able to create that place and space. And that we also give the schools medicine chests, and they're full of medicines. We want our teachers and our students to know things that can help our bodies, the reason why that they help our bodies, how do we, where do we find them? How do we, harvest them? And so to me, instructional leadership and that uniganyo is so much bigger than what it is in our research that we read through instructional leadership. Thank you, Heather.
Sorry about that. I had to unmute. And Patricia talked a little bit about teacher appraisals and how it was a hire fire kind of thing that happens around the end of the school year in some of our organizations. And really the cost of recruitment and retraining and retooling and all that is far more vast than working with somebody to bring them up. And what we wanted to do was, how do we build a person up? How do we build a teacher so that they're the best that they can be. Because when they're the best that they can be, they can assist our kids in being the best that they can be. And so we started developing this where the teacher writes their goal, the different tasks in order to achieve that goal in those 4 areas. So it's about nurturing the mind, the heart, the body, and the spirit. So we've created this template. We do have rubrics and a supporting document for our previous PGP, which was pretty good, but it didn't quite get to that holistic piece. And so we are now in the process of working through our rubric so that it matches this, and that we're really developing our professional staff in a holistic way, rather than just, for contract renewal or not, or in a negative or disciplinary way. So, and it's really self-driven. So the staff, they create their goals. They try to align them, of course, with the school success plans and the goals of the school. But there's that professional piece, but there's also the personal piece as well.
I would like to add, Heather, if that's okay. So I have lived
Absolutely.
experience with this because I went with this through one of my colleagues in the office. And if we want change, we need to try that change ourselves and work through as much as we can anything that would come up as concerns or issues as our thinking develops and as we connect to. So the snapshot of what it looks like is a greater picture of the holistic development of what we're trying to achieve in this organization. Unfortunately, we did have one other member on our senior admin team, and her name is Celia DeChambeau. And we were so sad to lose her, but she was starting her PhD and going into creating a framework. So she shared this framework with us. So I do want to give the credit to her for developing this framework. But we were right in it with her. And we were giving her feedback. We were talking about how this should look. And so when it came up to the planning and looking at this in that minupamatsu, and for myself, that it needed to not only come into the planning part and the curriculum, but it needed to be expand everywhere else, right? Alignment. And so if we're going to speak in one area, we should be speaking the same in another area, right? As in nurturing the mind, the heart, the body, and the spirit. So yesterday, I have a lived experience where I went through this with a staff member, and it was absolutely unbelievable, where this just naturally ties to what we as Indigenous people want to put down on things, that is growth, that it isn't like, I feel that the other one could have blocked the Indigenous ways of knowing and being and doing, but this doesn't. So it was just an unbelievable experience. The person that I did it with, Shirley Cardinal, had said this is the greatest PGP that I've ever been through. And there was a lady in chat who asked, her name is Celia DeChambeau. She actually went back to my community. We're both from Cumberland House Cree Nation, and so she took on a directorship in health there. So it's sad, but anyway, I just needed to put that in, because when we're tell by story, it connects to our heart.
Absolutely. And one of the other differences too is quite often evaluations are done once a year. It's kind of a one and done. And what we do is we have 3 different checkpoints minimum. And so the teacher does a self-assessment, they set their goals, then they come to their supervisor and they have a discussion on it and a chat. And then mid-year, we have another meeting with our staff, and we talk about where they're at, and it can be adjusted. So just because you have a goal there doesn't mean you're locked in. And things change, things come up. And so we can change it and tweak it. And then, of course, at the end of the year, it's a celebration really of where you've gotten to, what goals you've accomplished, and then start looking forward to your next set of goals and what's going to move forward with you and what's going to be new goals for the future.
Sorry, Heather, I'm going to jump into, because I had the opportunity to go through this with one of my staff as well, and it really opened a door for a different type of conversation. And throughout it, she was like, hey, well, what about, the other stuff on the rubric? And I said to her, I said, that's a different conversation. I said, this is about what you're choosing to work on for yourself in these 4 areas and how we can support you in growing in each of those areas. Those conversations about some of those specific roles and responsibilities is a set part of this. So it's not part of this conversation. I said, this is about, what can I do to support you professionally? Because when you look at the whole person, if that whole person is aligned, right, they're going to be better to serve the students that we work for. So it was thank you for bringing that up, Patricia, because I had a really good experience as well. So I have a couple more that are using this framework instead of the old one. So it'll be interesting.
Thank you, Liz. So I'll turn it over to Patricia, who also is our superintendent who oversees curriculum instruction and assessment, and just give you an idea of some of the things we've done to move our holistic development framework forward.
So we often talk about decolonizing our minds and also decolonizing our curriculum, and some of the things that we are making sure that we provide as a service, because that need came out into through conversations, through visits, through school visits, through community consultation. And we have some wonderful things that are going on that helps each and every one of our students and our teachers and our school-based admin and our community connect to each other and connect to the land. And like I said, we have that holistic planning. We as MLTC Education went and worked closely with community to develop community-based life language apps, and those are some of them are already launched and some of them are in the works. And we have, well, we know what TPR and ASLA is. We have the land-based learning. We have each of our schools that have done like a land-based calendar, but it's not only land-based calendar, it has other components that are a part of it that helps our kids be connected to themselves as Indigenous people, or as a Birch Narrows Dene Nation person, as a Canoe Lake Cree Nation person. And we also are just so closely to not launching the Wind of Four Directions, and it's an online interactive program that we are piloting with the grade 6 teacher and students, just to see how it works. And what it does is it bridges to elders' teachings, our values, along with technology. And we are always working on our Cree Dene laws and our values.
Absolutely. And we're in the process of revamping our education website. And so our debut will be after the Christmas break, so in the new year. And so all of this information, these templates, everything will be there. So we welcome you to check us out in January on our website, and you'll be able to have access to all of our supports. So Patricia's going to talk a little bit about the planning template we had for teachers. And one thing we do at MLTC Education is we always use ourselves. We try it on ourselves. And some of our staff are just like, oh goodness, this again. But we always want to work out the kinks and see how it goes before we put it out to our schools. And so we take information, we build something, we try it out, then we go back to our schools for feedback and consultation. And it's just an ongoing process like that, because we never want to do something to our First Nations. We always walk with them and do it with them and for them.
So this is an actual snippet from an exercise that I did with 2 other staff members on our team, which are not teachers. So here I am in this small group being an educator, and I was with other two social workers. And we started talking about, well, instead of looking at outcomes and indicators, let's talk about an activity that we do on the land, which would be hunting. And the discussion started off slow until we started telling story. when we started telling story, our mouths could not be quiet, because we were our stories and about, you know, family members, about school experiences, about things that we see when we go out and do school visits around that hunting. That was a phenomenal learning, and that was a turning point for myself. And I just don't want to share too much about that because we have other wonderful things to talk about. But we went messy, and once we connected it to story, that is when it took off.
So even with the holistic model, we wanted to do it across the board. And so Elizabeth, she oversees our student wellness sections and early years. And so I have a thing with Post-it notes and markers and drawing out all kinds of things. And I give it to our team, and they take it to a whole nother level. And so PPPs or IEPs, whatever it is that you call them, we turned it over to our student wellness team and said, how do we make this holistic? And I'll have Elizabeth Reed discuss that process.
Yes, thank you, Heather, for the lovely Post-it. And that's exactly what happened. Is I sat down with the team and we looked at using this foundation to focus on gathering student strengths first in all 4 areas. So not just looking at what they can do academically in their mind, but their heart, their body, and their spirit. Because typically we all know what happens in the student services special ed world is that we focus on what the child can't do, and specifically academically and socially. So what we're hoping is that this is going to flip the mindset of the teachers to start looking through a strength-based lens and looking at the whole child. Let's then utilize those strengths to build a program for the student that's going to ensure their success in the other areas of their development. So one of the things I had some examples that I was thinking about. One of the ones that we talked about is, and I've actually done this, is we've often seen some of our middle years and high school students that struggle with building relationships, making friendships, keeping those friendships. But you put them with the younger students and they're amazing. They may or may not have some academic struggles that they're going through. But what I've done in the past is you develop that buddy system with the younger grades. You send them down with, you know, some guidance and support in place. And their goal is to, you know, one, do an academic program with the kindergarten grade 1 students. But in doing that, those students will also develop maybe the reading or the math skills that they maybe need some support in. But you can also have them monitor how are they interacting with these students, and then try to transition that learning into their current grade and with their peer systems. But so I've done that a number of times when I was in Canoe Lake with our older students, bringing them down to the younger grades. And that's just one area where you utilize that area of strength when they have with their spirit. I'm going to just kind of go back quickly to the virtues program. So that was another one that Heather kind of had a couple little Post-it notes on, and I was thinking about some of the programs that I've utilized in the school, specifically, you know, some social emotional learning programs, zones of regulation, character education programs. And so we have our Denis and Cree laws and our values. So and Heather was like, how can we utilize this? And I was like, hey, I don't know. So during the summer, I had the lovely opportunity to be isolated for 10 days in Saskatoon. So I got a lot of this work and thinking done and out on paper, and it's still very much in draft. And then we were looking at it again the other day, and Heather and Patricia had another bright idea. Let's take this framework. We're looking at the focusing on the spirit, the mind, the body, and the heart. And what does each of our values look like from each of those perspectives? So if you take humility, for example, how can we create a program or activities, things that are grounded, number one, like Patricia said, in story, land-based learning, and then incorporating our values into that program. So we're still very much in the draft phase. And like Patricia said, we and Heather said, we utilize our staff first. So we're going to have a staff brainstorming session around that at our next staff meeting.
Just a little bit of a heads up. We got 5 minutes left.
Thank you, Simon. We're almost done. We've done also a school success plan under this model. That was one of the first ones we did, because if you don't have leadership driving this, it won't go anywhere. And so we started with our school-based administrators and that school success plan. And that school success plan requires all staff, janitors, EAs, teachers, community members to come in and build that with you. And so that's where we started, and then we moved into these other areas. And
Heather,
so that's, yeah.
Sorry, can I just share about what you just finished talking about, the school success plan? So we need our initiatives in there, like literacy, numeracy, and we had LLRC, we had instructional leadership, we had early learning, we had student wellness. And what we did was purposely flipped the order of importance. No longer did we want to see that literacy and numeracy at the forefront of their school success plans. They were at the bottom. It was with purpose, because we know that we need to connect our kids, our students and our teachers with their heart. And that is in LLRC. That's in the land, language, relationships, and culture. So I just wanted to put that in. And I also needed to quickly add, I'm so sorry, in the student wellness, we want our OTs, our ed psychs, our SLPs to get to know families on the land. They're not only there only for assessment, because we know that that's not working. I just needed to say that.
Thank you. So some of the big items here is what Liz said: flipping the mindset, relational, building your team, starting within and building outwards. And so we really thank you for the time. We wish we could go on and on and on, which we are known for, but Simon's giving me the time warning here. So if there's any questions or anything like that, we're more than happy to answer.
Yeah, well, we do have a couple minutes if anybody has any questions. Okay, I see some people in the comments there that are looking forward to your presentation, and I'm sure you're going to get some traffic. I really like the fact that you're always upgrading, always improving. You know, your new website there. The fact that everything that you're going to be posting, it's up for grabs to share. I appreciate that. And so if anybody wants to definitely check out your website, they can, but it's always it's always good to just acknowledge and a little bit of a gratitude there as to where it comes from. And of course, you're always available. So with that, I say thank you so much. Thank you.